Hello, I am Elpinex. I'm going to be teaching you how to play Bilgewater today. Bilgewater is great. It's pirates. It's got Fizz, who is a terrorist. It's one of the most fun, I think, comps to play probably in the last couple of sets, but it is also incredibly hard to steer in the right way. I still see a lot of people make mistakes with it, so I'm going to run over some of that today so that you can learn it also. So there are a few different variations of Bilgewater, and I'm sure that more will crop up over time, and some will lose popularity and some will gain some. Um, we had last patch, we had a really big surge in Graves and Twisted Fate reroll in their popularity, although they have been hit a bit with the nerfs to Graves. Less viable now, but who knows? In the future, it might come back up. You can do Gangplank, reroll, Slayers. It's not quite a Bilgewater comp. You don't really go above 3 really at any point. This you can just do standard Bilgewater, tempo all the way fast 9, and then there are some variations that play around kind of trying to unlock ryze and Volibear and kind of slotting those in, and there are some others playing around Iona and Set, for example. And yeah, I'm no doubt that there will be a Shurima Bilgewater at some point or a Yordle Bilgewater at some point. And when that time comes, then yeah, we can go over it. So the conditions, obviously you shouldn't hard force any comp really. You need to have a good spot for things. Generally, you want to have a Twisted Fate on 2-1. Ideally, you want it slightly before from like an orb drop so that you can unlock Graves and have 3 Bilgewater in on the first combat round. That is really important. The whole point of the composition is that it's going to be aggressive, it's going to be winning rounds, so you want to get that in early. You also want to start stacking the serpents, silver serpents, as early as you can. At the beginning on 3 builds, you're not going to get a lot of them, so the sooner you can get them, the sooner you can get your 2-star units, so you can get the items and the stats, and you can start to snowball from that. So an ideal example opener would be, and this is an ideal world, Shen 2 allow you to TF Graves, and a good item to either slam on kind of Alawi, Graves, or Twisted Fate is fine. And as I said, you want 3 builds in ASAP. A good thing to do is if you have a Bilgewater spat, obviously really good way to play it and very clear direction. And also the Sweet Treats augment, which gives you an artifact, and then also it is similar to, if anyone remembers, Exotech from like 2 sets ago, where you get extra HP based on every item that your team has. So obviously with Bilgewater getting extra items, and especially when you get to Tahm Kench, he will print components by eating people. It's just a really good augment to pair with it. In the early game, in stage 2 and 3, you want to try and get to 5 builds ASAP. You don't really want to roll for your build units using the normal shop. You can use the Bilgewater shop to get 2 stars off things like Graves and Twisted Fate. But you should also prioritize getting Nautilus or GP from your Bilgewater shop where possible, and also from Carousel. You can be really flexible with items, so AD, AP, tank items, they all work. So you can kind of int your Carousel a little bit to get a Nautilus or Gangplank, even if there isn't an ideal item. And as I mentioned, you can upgrade the 2 stars via the build shop. Captain's Brew is really high priority. It got nerfed a little bit, I believe. I think it's probably going to get hit again in the next patch. Should be coming up in, I think it's this week. But it's still really good. Twisted Fate is a really good spreader of the chill and the burn and the wound. So really high prio, should be the first item that you get. And moving on to the mid game, you should already have 5 Bilgewater in by kind of the start of stage 3, and you want to try and push for 7 as soon as possible as well. You want to play really aggressively, so slamming items wherever you can. You can buy stats where you can, and you want to win stage 3 and ideally the first 2 or 3 rounds of stage 4. The reason for this is that you're probably going to start losing some rounds in mid to the end of stage 4 and into the early parts of stage 5, while you kind of greed your serpents to get items, and you greed your econ a little bit to try and get to 9 to try and get the 5 costs. So you should be trying to get 7 builds in by the end of stage 3, or by like 4-1-ish. The earliest you'll probably get it is like 3-5 or kind of 3-6, 3-5 if you're lucky. You can, and you definitely should, buy Misfortune from the build shop to get 7 Bilgewater in. It is definitely worth it, and you should do it. You should buy stats wherever you can if you have extra. It's never a bad thing to spend the serpents on stats. You need to unlock Tahm Kench anyway, so every little spend is a little bonus towards that. They are really, really good. So the first ones are kind of a little bit overstated, and then after a while they stop being useful. There's diminishing returns. So ideally you would buy the first 2 at 3, 5, and 7, and that counts for the attack speed, the HP, and also the AD and AP ones. After that, it's a bit more tricky. They are kind of less worth it. If you have leftover serpents, the question is, do you go for stats or do you go for the item? Personally, I would probably go for the item. Like a second 7 Bilgewater item, for example, I think would have more combat power than the amount of serpents you would have to spend to get like 6% HP. But, you know, each their own. You want to tempo timmy it up, get your econ up, roll on 8 a little bit if you need to get MF and Fizz 2, and you can use the build shop as well, ideally, to save a bit of money, and start greeding for your build items. At least 1. 2 if you're healthy. If you are win streaking and you're super, super healthy, hey, screw it, go for 3, why not? In the late game, you need to push for level 9 kind of as soon as you can. 5-1 is normally a good time to go, as long as you have enough gold to kind of roll for your upgrades. You want to hold units like Wukong, Shyvana, Swain, Fiddlestick, Lucian, Kindred, and Ornn as well. If you get an early Ornn is really good, especially if you're going to be sacking kind of half of stage 4 anyway. If you get an early Ornn, you can wait to get an Ornn item as well. So you hold those units, and then you want to start transitioning away from 7 builds. Once you have kind of 1 or 2 items, you have your forecast upgraded, you have Tahm Kench, and then you want to drop things like GP, unless you're doing GP reroll. You want to drop a Lowry, you want to drop Graves, unless you're doing the reroll, and you want to start slotting in units like Wukong, Volley, Swain, Swift, all the ones I've just mentioned. On 9, you can also unlock Ziggs. Twisted Fate will probably have been holding any of your leftover AP items, or maybe Fizz was. You can swap some items over onto Ziggs if you have them. If you don't have items for Fizz, for Ziggs, it's not really worth unlocking Ziggs. You know, a Ziggs 2 is like 15 gold. It's not worth it. Right? Just put them on someone else. Slot in a different 5 cost if you need to. An itemless Ziggs is not going to be that good. How to win out? The power behind Bilgewater is you're going to have more items than everybody else. You've got a really clear path to level 9. It has got some strong units. Misfortune is good. Fizz is a terrorist. Tahm Kench can just delete their main tank and then let you go forward and kill everything. And it has really good synergies with the 5 costs like Lucian Senna, with Fiddlesticks, with Shyvana. So really, really good, strong comp. You should generally be a beast, especially if you've been buying the stats. They do make a big difference. A lot of people ignore them. And yeah, as mentioned, you have Fizz the Terrorist. Make sure that you're positioning properly for Fizz. If you can go and wipe out the other person's Iona in the first 20 seconds, then you are more than happy and you will win the round. Some tips for Tahm Kench and some other little bits. Tahm Kench is an absolute beast. On 1 cost, in 1 star, he is better than 0-2. He's better than most of your tanks. Get the items on Tahm Kench. Pile of Citrus is a really good item on Tahm Kench. And with the positioning, like I mentioned with Fizz earlier, what you should be trying to do is position Tahm Kench to take out either their kind of main tank, or if they have like a frontline carry. If they take out the frontline tank, everything else in their frontline is just going to get wiped and just run over, and then that is a really easy way to kind of cheat and win around. Ideally, Tahm Kench kills them. He probably won't initially, but it's out of the way, basically. It's like a stun, but better. For feeding Tahm Kench, I generally tend, people do it in different ways. I tend to feed Tahm Kench all of the time. So if I'm poor and I don't have my upgrades for my 4 cost and 5 cost, I will just feed him 1 star units. 1 cost, 1 stars. Like, I'll feed him a Shen every now and again. Or if I am dropping out one of my Bilgewater units, I will just feed him that. My way of thinking is that every little bit will add up over time. It's not that big of a swing. But generally, you want to not spend much money at all feeding Tahm Kench until you have hit kind of most of, if not all of, your board. Once you've hit your 2 stars, then go crazy. He's a hungry frogman, and he will be an absolute beast. He's a catfish, isn't he? I don't know. Ziggs on 9, I mentioned earlier. If you have the TF items, AP items on TF, move them over. Maybe not worth unlocking if you don't have items for them, but you probably should. With Tahm Kench and the Bilgewater items, you should probably have a couple left over. And if you're healthy, you can greed for the 7 Bilge items. So you can get 1, maybe 2. So you get Captain's Brew, you can get Pile of Citrus. You can greed if you're quite healthy, and you can get like Black Market Explosives is really good on Fizz, and also really good on ryze. Ryze can hold Bilgewater items. If you end up playing into ryze for whatever reason, you can put that on him. And there are also items that can go on frontline units like Nautilus and Tahm Kench, like Barnacles, and there are a couple that are good on Misfortune as well. They do tell you who they're good with, so you can generally work it out. And Orn items, wholly powerful. Like, if you can get an extra build item and then you can get an Orn item or 2, then you are just going to be an absolute beast, and you should be absolutely fine. Reroll, as I mentioned right at the start, the GPTF reroll has been hit a little bit by nerfs, so it's not quite as good. I personally don't really go for GP for Gangplank and TF reroll very much. GP is a little bit different. If you have a spot for it, it's pretty good, especially with Bilgewater vertical being so contested. But the rules don't change very much. You generally will play the comp in the exact same way with some slight variance. So you still don't roll for GP, TF, or Graves. You only use the dupes from the build shop and the build shop itself. You still try and go 8, and you still try and go for 9. Personally, I probably, if I'm playing Graves TF, I wouldn't try and go for Graves or TF 3. Unless I natural like 5 or 6 of them pretty early on. And then, yeah, okay, if I've got 6 TFs and I've got another one in the build shop and I have a duplicator, why not? I might as well get it. But I honestly don't think it's worth it that much. I would rather get an extra item or extra stats and just try and go for 9. And yeah, I think it's a bit better. Same with Nautilus. A lot of people chase Nautilus 3. Nautilus 3 is good, don't get me wrong. But I would probably rather have my items on Tahm Kench 2. Because even if Nautilus 3 is a bit better as a tank, Tahm Kench also prints you econ. He also prints you items. And he just swallows one of their front line. Tahm Kench is a beast. So yeah, I'm a lover, not a hater. With the reroll comps for Graves and TF, you would still drop down to 5 builds late game. You would generally prioritize different 5 costs ever so slightly. So you would want to prioritize getting Kindred in for Quick Striker. You might even drop Misfortune if you don't have them 2-starred, and you would put Senna 2-star in instead. But generally it's fairly similar. I'm not sure if it's worth playing right now at the moment. GP reroll with Slayers is slightly different though. I'll get onto that in a sec. GP Slayers and Belveth, it's hard to win out with this comp, although not impossible. It's really good to play if you get a GP from an orb drop, and you have an item that you can slam. So a Quicksilver is good, a Hodge is good, or if you get an artifact. So Darken Bow, Rapid Fire Cannon are both really good on Belveth. Prowler's Core, Triforce, there's probably a couple of others that I'm not thinking off the top of my head that are good on GP. Similar to TF and Graves reroll, you do not roll for GP. Again, you just keep 3 builds in, you use the build shop to get him to 3-star, you tempo Timmy it up to 8. I guess there is a world where you could play 5 for a bit, but realistically, you probably don't need to. You want to be grabbing your 4 costs on 8 and roll for Swain and Besser Belvev 2. Belvev 2 is the prio, then Swain 2 is the next prio, and then Mbessa is the final priority. You want to try and push 9, get Fiddle, get Shyvana. If you played Void around Rek'Sai, who's a really good item holder, then you can get Rift Herald, who is probably the best tank in the game. Maybe Tahm Kench, because I like him, is better, but it's generally understood that Rift Herald is the best tank in the game, and that's after they got nerfed, so they are a beast. And then, yeah, it's just positioning. Like, there isn't much positioning. I've put this at the top to have a look at. The only positioning is which side you're going to be on. And then, yeah, you generally want to be on one of the corners so that you can sometimes hit their back corner carries with GP's, like, barrels. But, yeah. Items, Quicksilver. Belvev really, really wants Quicksilver. Kraken, even though it got nerfed, is still good. And Gangplank kind of wants Quicksilver as well, but you can play around with the items a little bit, and IE isn't terrible on Gangplank. Sterex, Hodge, Bloodthirster, all good. Some of the artifacts are good, as I mentioned. Belvev, Quicksilver's kind of a necessary, but you can play around a little bit. There is a little bit of variance that you can do there, but generally it's a good comp. You might be able to win out, especially if you have been buying the stats in the Bilgewater shop, especially if you get something like an artifact on Belvev, and if you can get in that Fiddle and Shyvana. I won a game a few days ago playing it. I had Rapid Fire Cannon on Belvev. I just got combat augments and eventually just won out. It's doable. I'd say artifacts are the way to win out, but generally you'd be looking at a top 4 pretty strongly with this. But yeah, that's GP Slayers. And then the final thoughts. Bilgewater is a really tricky comp to get right. A lot of people think it's simple, but there is so much variance. Do you buy stats? Do you not? When do you buy stats? Bilgewater, like toggling the Bilgewater shop, going from 7 to 5 to 3 to buy the shops, and then back up, getting the items, which items are good on who, which people you should drop when you get to level 9, and who you should put in, and should you keep TF in to get Kindred, and have that quick striker buff, which is 15% for your team. Some people think yes, some people think no. I am generally I don't know yet. I try both. And there's so many variations, right? You can play the vertical, you can play around Ryze and Volibear, you can play around Iona, you can play frejlord, you can play rerolls for the 3 of them. You can have Fizz and MF and it can still do well. So I think it'll stay in the meta. I have no doubt that it will change and there will be new variations that come up, but because it's fun, people will find a way to keep it relevant. Fizz in the next patch, from the notes that I've seen, is going to get hit fairly hard, so it might be a little bit more tricky to get to that level 8, level 9 board without Fizz being a terrorist and wiping everyone's backline. But the best thing to do would be just to watch pro players, watch a VOD or watch them live or whatever it is, or watch some of the tournament. We've just had the tier 1 and tier 2. So have a look and see how they did it and see how do they get to their end board. There are a lot of routes to get there and there are a lot of different ways. Do you take combat augments and try and win through stage 4 as well as stage 3? Do you take econ and sack stage 4 and go to 9? Which augments do you take? Which items do you build on who? So there is a lot of variance, and it's all about just choosing the right variation depending on your spot. No doubt most lobbies will still continue to have 3 or 4 Bilgewater players in, and yeah, maybe just go for GP Slayers if you see 3 other people load in with TF on 2-1, and take your humble top 4. Anyways, have fun with the pirates. I definitely do. Much love, and yeah, it's Sunday today, so have a good Sunday.